Hi, my name is Nick and today I'm going to show you how I made this Halloween mask from scratch. The first step to make a latex mask is to block out the shape on a head form. You can use a foam head, but they are frequently too small and need additional clay to make sure your mask will fit. I'm using wet clay, which is a water-based clay and a little easier to work with. I put large chunks of clay on the form to figure out the basic shape I want. Then I use a metal kidney tool to smooth out the clay. I left holes where the eyes go, so I would be able to line them up later so I'd be able to see out the mask. Once I found the main shape, I added eyes. I am using plastic ornament forms for the eyes because they will be perfect spheres in the final sculpture. Here I am blocking out more of the shape of the face, trying to figure out where the mouth is going to go. I worked for a while on the large eyes, but then decided that they were too big. It's never too late to revise your sculpture before you mold it. Once you mold it, it'll be a lot harder to make any changes to the mask. I removed the big eyes and used a smaller set of ornaments for the new eyes. Once I removed the old eyes, I smoothed out the face so that I could get to work on the new shape. I placed the new eyes in and started adding some details around them. I used water and a sponge to smooth out the sculpture. I used a pencil to add creases around the eyes and additional details. Then I used a sponge to smooth it out. I made tiny balls of clay and added it to the tongue for texture. I used a chip brush to smooth out the details on the tongue. I made sure to wipe off the eyes because any imperfection will be trapped in the final mold. Now that I finished the sculpture of the mask, I'm going to make a mold of it so I can cast it in latex. I'm going to need plaster, buckets, a metal sheeting, and some chip brushes. I'm going to use these thin pieces of metal that I got at the hardware store to make a mold wall so that we'll mold the front first and then the back second. I've used these thin sheets of metal to make up a mold wall. This is not the only way you can do it, but it's probably the fastest way. So now I'm going to mix a plaster and put it on just this side. Once it sets, I'll take out the metal and I'll do it on the other side. I recommend wearing a respirator when you're working with the plaster because the little particles are not good to breathe in. The best way I've found to make plaster is to add water to a bucket and then add your plaster to that. You want to keep pouring until the top of the plaster looks like a dry riverbed. Once you get that look, then you can mix it up. This will help prevent clumps and bubbles in your final plaster mixture. I brush the plaster on to get a really clean first layer and make sure I got all of the details that I sculpted. Once I got the first layer on, I was able to put the plaster on thicker for the second and third layers. Then I did the same thing to the back of the sculpture. Once the plaster set, I removed the metal sheets and separated the mold. It took a little bit of work to get the two sides apart. I would recommend unmolding as soon as your plaster cures in about a day or so. I waited way too long and the clay had dried up a lot, which made it a lot harder to demold. Once you get all your clay out, you need to clean out your mold and make sure you get any little chunks of clay out. Then I put the two sides of the mold back together and taped the two sides together. I do not recommend tape. I would use like a ratchet strap or something, but I didn't have that on hand. This is mask latex, and I am pouring it into the mold. Ideally, you would have enough latex to fill the entire mold, and then you would wait about 10 minutes and pour it out, and then you'd have the perfect thickness of your mask, but I didn't have enough latex, so I had to pour it into the mold and kind of slosh it around to get on all the edges. And I actually added 2 layers of latex. Once the latex fully dried, I pried it away from the sides of the mold and pulled it out. It's a good idea to dust the inside with cornstarch or something, or talcum powder, so that it doesn't stick to itself. I also cleaned up the edges and I put it back onto my original head form. You can see that I have a lot of flashing, which is the latex that got caught in between the two sides of the mold. That's because of the metal pieces. I wouldn't recommend doing that if I was going to do it again. Here I cut some eye holes by the mouth, and then I'm just repairing some of the seam line to make it a little smoother. When you paint your mask, it's a good idea to add some of the mask latex to the paint to make sure that it stays flexible and won't crack off. So I'm painting the eyes and the teeth white. It took a couple layers to make sure that it was opaque enough. Then I mixed up another batch in a kind of teal color and applied it to the rest of the head. I did a couple layers of this as well. Now mixing up color for the lips and for around the eyes to give some added detail to the paint job. You can paint your mask however you want. I could have gone super cartoony and just done very flat colors, but I felt like because of the detail of the sculpture and the wrinkles and stuff, that it would be better to paint it in a slightly more realistic way. I did decide to go with cartoony eyes and just giant black pupils, so yeah. I cut a little hole underneath the bottom lip so that it's easier to breathe inside the mask. Otherwise, with just the two eye holes, it was pretty hard to breathe inside. And there you go, there's the final mask. Let me know any questions in the comments and suggestions for other projects you want me to make.